So we waited all this time for the trade deadline for that. 2 trades. 2020 NFL trade deadline. Epic fail. Who else could it be? Me, you're me, Louie T. Welcome to the 108th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I made a mistake yesterday, or Monday, and I didn't even realize it. I said that was the 106th episode of the podcast. It was actually the 107th. So this is what happens when you don't keep track of what you're doing. And I got a story to tell real quick. So I had somebody hit me up, was like, hey, man, what's going on with the podcast on Apple, man? Like, I haven't seen the episodes up there. And I had somebody hit me up about 2 months ago, was like, look, man, now that you're doing it on YouTube, that's cool. But don't forget about us. I still need it on my streaming app. I still need it on, Stitcher and Apple Podcasts and Google Music Play and all of the different places you can get it. I still need it there. And I said, don't worry, I got you, man. I'm not going to cut y'all short. Y'all been the ones supporting the pod before I started doing it on YouTube live. So I'm not going to forget about y'all. I got y'all. And I've been trying to be diligent in making sure I keep up with the podcast being uploaded. So I store my podcast on Libsyn. Libsyn then distributes it to all of the different podcast streaming sites and apps. And so I'm being cheap. This is my problem. I'm being very, very frugal. So you get a certain amount of storage space per month for your podcast. And the amount of money you pay is going to equal out to how much storage space you get. So obviously the more money you pay, the more storage space you get. And I was paying like $20 a month, and it was enough storage space. It was like 400 megabytes or so. So it was plenty of space. Initially, when I was only doing the podcast once a week. When I upped it to 3 times a week, it became a little bit more of, a little tighter, as the episodes got longer and more episodes in general. 400 megabytes wasn't enough space. So then I said, okay, I'll up it a little bit, $30 a month, and I think it stretched out to like 500. That wasn't enough, so I upped it again. It was $40 a month, and stretched out to like 600, I think. And then I got up to $50 a month, and I'm like, whoa, now I'm getting a little bit, this is a lot more than I wanted to invest in this, and that got me to 800. And I'm looking, and I'm like, I don't know about this. I think I'm at $40 now, maybe 50. I'm not sure, but I still don't have enough space per month for the amount of episodes I'm doing. So I'm trying to cut corners, and get all the way up to however many megabytes I can get to without going over. And last month it stopped me right at around episode 101 or 102. So I'm playing catch up. I'm going to upload all of those episodes for those of you waiting for all the episodes that are backlogged to get up there. They're coming. Trust me. I didn't forget about you. There was a method to my madness, but I may have to break down and pay the extra fee. The thing about it is, in my mind, everything I do is meticulously planned out. Like, the cost of how much it would be to make the megabytes bigger and give me more storage space isn't, to me, worth the amount of spins I'm getting via those different apps, if you get where I'm going with that. I want to make sure that I get everybody included and I hit all of my different bases, but I don't know if I can do it with the amount of space that I would be required to have and what I would be required to pay a month. So We'll see. Look, at the end of the day, you're going to get all of your episodes, and I'm going to catch up. Now, if at some point this month you don't see any episodes up there, but yet I've done 2 or 3 more episodes, you know why. Now you're in the know. You know why. At some point, I'm just going to break down. I'm going to have to do what I got to do. And I'll probably have to pay more and extend it out. And so I can get all of the content up there in a timely manner. But in any event, I just thought I would let you guys know what was going on. How about the trade deadline? And we're going to talk about that ad nauseum today. That'll be the biggest topic of discussion on today's pod. We'll preview the Thursday night game a little bit later on in the show. I'll take your comments on social media maneuvers if you're out there. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been immersed in the presidential race. I was on CNN. My TV has been on CNN nonstop, upstairs, downstairs. This is a good reprieve from that. This is why we love sports, because it's a getaway from the monotonous everyday news cycle and the things that go on that you just want to escape. That's what sports is supposed to be, a little bit of an escape. For me, it's a way of life. Especially football in particular. And so I thought the trade deadline had a chance to, wrestle a little bit of the. Now, it wasn't going to come close. It was going to pale in comparison to the presidential election and the race. However, I thought they had an opportunity to create another conversation off on the side. Man, did you hear about this trade? Man, that was a blockbuster move. This is really going to give the Packers an opportunity. There was none of that. Really, the Dolphins were like, hey, nobody else wants to trade? We'll make some trades. So I look, at the end of the day, really disappointed by the trade deadline. But I want to read this to you. As a matter of fact, before we get to any of that, before I get into exactly why no trades were really made, let's go ahead and get into the gem dropping session, shall we? I believe we should. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So, I was on Twitter yesterday after the trade deadline came and went. Really nothing to see. Dolphins made a couple of trades. And I've got something to say about one of those 2 Dolphins trades. We'll talk about that in a second. But Albert Breer on Twitter said something that was really poignant, and it's true. And I've heard this before. I heard this way before the trade deadline. I've even heard, I'll take it a step further. And I was listening to the Move the Sticks podcast like 2-3 months ago. And they talked about, them talking to some GMs, and they said, you're not going to see. They thought that the trade deadline and the uncertainty of the offseason was going to have an even bigger effect on the trade deadline in the opposite direction. They said that GMs were going to go after known commodities because this is such a weird offseason coming up, and the last offseason was such a weird offseason. If that's anything that if that is any indication of what's to come in the upcoming offseason, then with all the players sitting out in the 2020 college football season, with all of the uncertainty with a lot of these prospects, you don't really know what you're getting. Guys haven't played actual tackle football in over a year's time. You got some guys that haven't played in a real football game since December of 2018. Or 2019. Think about that. If you're coming off of an injury and you didn't play in 2019 at all, and you decided to opt out of 2020, you haven't played in a game since 2018. But more specifically, the guys that we're talking about, the Gregory Rousseaus and the Caleb Farleys and those guys who opted out of the 2020 season that are looked at, as huge top 5, top 10 draft selections, they're not playing in the 2020 season. They haven't played in the game since 2019. So when you look at that and you start comparing those things and you start thinking about those prospects, you really don't know what you're getting. Obviously, the film is there. You can comb through it. You can take from it what you will, but You want to see guys continue to progress. You want to see guys on the field more recently so that you can assess what you're getting if you're going to spend a top 5 pick on one of these prospects. And because of the uncertainty of the college football season and these players opting out and really not knowing what they're doing with their time, obviously you're going to have an opportunity to see them, talk to them, see them work out, see if they're in great shape or not. However, teams are going to go after known commodities. And that was supposed to be one of the differences this year, that the trade deadline was going to take on more meaning because teams would be more willing to part ways with a first or a second because of the lack of value with those picks and not knowing what they were going to get. Now, what you couldn't take into consideration at that time when I listened to that podcast and what they were saying was that the cap would change, and that because there would be no ticket sales at the gate, because there would be no concession prices and money gained from that, and that there was going to be a hit essentially that these owners were going to take, and that would affect the salary cap in 2021 more likely than not, that maybe teams would be a little bit more inclined to hold on to draft picks because that's cheap labor. That's less money that you got to shell out versus a veteran that's going to make more money. So Albert Breer tweeted this out, and this makes a ton of sense. He says 3 problems with trade talks to this point. And at that moment when he tweeted this out, 18 minutes were left in the trade deadline, and nothing would happen in those 18 minutes essentially. He says, number 1, asking prices have been relatively high on veteran players. Again, teams were looking to take advantage of a desperate team. I told you, I don't know if we've seen a season this wide open because there are no Patriots this year. The Chiefs are under the radar. I still think the Chiefs are a dominant football team. It's funny. I said this on last episode of the podcast that it's amazing when I talked about their 35-9 win over the Jets, and I said nobody's talking about the Chiefs. It's amazing just how dominant they're still 7-1. Like, nobody's talking Chiefs football because they're going about their business human-like. They're not destroying teams every week, even though the last 2 opponents, granted, it's Denver and the Jets. They destroyed both of those teams. 143-16 in week 8 over the Denver Broncos. And then, a 35-9 beatdown in which Mahomes had over 400 yards and 5 touchdown passes versus the Jets. And so they're still going about their business the way that we are accustomed to seeing. They're just doing it quieter, and the Steelers are undefeated, and the Seahawks and Russell Wilson's on this torrid pace, and so all the headlines are going elsewhere, and the Chiefs are quietly. I told you, I've never seen a 7-1 more under the radar than the Chiefs, but that's nor here nor there. Teams are asking for high prices for these veteran players because it's wide open. And if you're desperate enough, you'll pay the price. But teams said, you know what? No, we're not going to pay the price. We would like your veteran. We want your Ryan Kerrigan, but we're not giving you a 3rd round pick for him. We want your Will Fuller, but guess what? We're not giving you a 2nd round pick for him. So if you're not going to give me what I'm asking for, then guess what? I'll just hold on to him. And that was the approach that teams took. There was a hard line stance, a line drawn in the sand where teams said, hey, this is what I want from my guy. If you're not going to give it to me, then I'll just hold on to him. That's the right move. That's the right approach to have, because in a lot of these instances, you're probably going to get a compensatory pick for a lot of these players back in return, depending on what you do. Again, we know there's this really convoluted equation as to how compensatory picks are shelled out. However, if you're not going to give me what I'm looking for, then I'll just hold on to him. He's worth more to me than he is for me to just give him away. I may get more in a compensatory pick this offseason than me just giving him away to you for a 5th round pick. And whatever the Texans were asking for Will Fuller, and I agree. If I'm the Texans, I don't know what they were asking for, but to me, for Will Fuller, it's no less than a 2nd. I want a 2nd round pick for Will Fuller. He's a difference maker. When he's healthy, he's one of the best deep threat receivers in football. I want a 2nd round pick for him. He's young. He's coming off of his rookie contract. You're going to be able to sign him. You're going to have first dibs on signing him to a new deal in the upcoming offseason. I want a 2nd round pick. You don't want to give me a 2nd round pick? That's fine. I'll hold on to him. And maybe the Packers said, look, I'll give you a third. And the Texans are like, no, I want a second. The Texans are thinking, I'm going to get a third anyway and a compensatory pick if he signs elsewhere for big money. And the Packers are thinking, exactly, you're going to get a third and a compensatory pick. Why don't you just take this third? And they're thinking, nah, I'm good because I want a second from you. Your second's going to be like a third anyway. It's going to be in the back end of the second round. Just give me your second. They're like, nah, I'm good. Okay, well, fine. We won't have a deal. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason Albert Breer wrote, 21 cap makes it tougher to take on guys due or asking for big money past this year. So Will Fuller is a great example that we're talking about. Will Fuller, he's going to want to be paid in the offseason. Well, guess what? The cap, because it's not every year for the last like 8 to 10 years, the cap has steadily been on an incline. Every year with the TV money and all of the different things that have happened, the revenue continues to grow and bubble in the NFL, and the salary cap continues to go up and up and up and up. And because of COVID-19, because of no fans in the stands, because of all of the hits that owners have had to take this year and some of the concessions they've had to make to get this season off the ground, the cap is probably either going to stay still or even decrease in 2021. The likelihood is that it decreases. And because it's going to potentially decrease, teams are like, hey, we're not in a position to be shelling out big time money. You know, we much rather get 8 or 9 rookies on the roster and pay those guys minimum salaries and keep the costs low instead of going out and signing a veteran free agent to a 5-year, $75 million deal, you know, with an annual salary of, $10, $11 million in terms of the hit on the cap. How about we just go in a different direction? And so you're seeing a lot of teams start taking into account what's to come next year because of this domino effect of 2020 and COVID-19. So that's another interesting point. Now, it's different if you're trading for a guy, and that's why I thought you wouldn't see necessarily a Will Fuller come off the books because of what teams would be asking, what the Texans might be asking for. I told you wouldn't see a Stephon Gilmore come off the board. Why? Because of what the Patriots, they made it known. Not only do we want a first round pick, we also want a player in return. So they've said, no, not only are you not getting our guy for just a pick, we want a player too. So they put that hardline stance out there. They set the bar really high, and they said, if you want this guy, you got to meet this bar. And not only that, he's making a ton of money that you're going to have to pick up. Here's the thing. I thought guys like Randall Cobb would be interesting, guys that aren't making a ton of money. That was the kind of guy that you go after in the trade deadline, like Emmanuel Sanders a season ago. Guys that are veterans, that aren't making a ton of money, that the team that they are previously coming from has already eaten half of the cap hit for the season. You'll take on the rest, and it's not going to break the bank for you. And then that guy comes off the books next year, and you can start anew. Essentially a rental player. And I think Randall Cobb might have signed a 2-year deal in Houston, so you may have him for another year. But, I thought that was going to be some of the types of deals we saw. I was wrong. And then number 3, looming cap shortfall equals value of draft picks high. So essentially, because of the cap maybe lowering next year, the value of having draft picks skyrockets enormously. And I just laid out all the points as to why. It's cheaper to keep the rookie than it is to pay the veteran. So teams are going to be looking to cut costs in the upcoming offseason where they normally wouldn't have to, because the cap would normally be going up another $8 or $9 million. But instead, the cap may be decreasing. And because of that uncertainty, you've got to be able to have the flexibility. If you're Jacksonville, you're Washington, one of these teams with an inordinate amount of cap space, you're not worried about any of this stuff. None of this is really going to affect you. You're going to have plenty of cap space, no matter what happens to the cap. All right. But if you're one of these teams that's pressed up against the cap, that's always pressed up against the cap, like New Orleans or Dallas or one of these teams like that, then you've got to find a way to cut off the fat, to trim the fat, to cut a corner or two. the best way to do that is to have 7 or 8 draft picks that make your football team. Guys that aren't going to break the bank, that aren't going to cost you a bunch of money. You shed some dead cap with some of these veterans. You don't take on any more big deals, and you keep it moving that way. So that's what you're going to see, and I thought that was a really eloquently put tweet by Albert Breer, and it really hammers home the point of why this trade deadline was such a dud. It really was a dud. And the Dolphins had a couple of picks, trades. They traded for running back DeAndre Washington from the Chiefs. He was a draft pick out of Texas Tech about 5 years ago for the Raiders. Had been on their roster for a while. They make the trade for DeAndre Washington from the Chiefs. And then they go out and they trade Isaiah Ford. So they get a running back, and then they trade away a wide receiver in Isaiah Ford. And remember, I kept saying, hey, there's something to this Isaiah Ford guy. I talked about this like 2 weeks ago, and I said, man, Isaiah Ford, he's making some plays. He, every now and again he'll make a play, and I go, yeah, that's a pretty good, damn good play. He was a nice little 3rd, 4th option at receiver. I hope this isn't another Wes Welker situation. Anytime you trade a guy inside the division, there's something to that, because the teams in the division, no one knows your stuff more than the other family members in the division. They're watching you, they're eyeballing your stuff. That's why you see a lot of guys end up in free agency on teams in the division. It's not a coincidence that Alfred Morris has played for now the Cowboys, Washington, and the Eagles. Because why? Because the Eagles respected him when they saw him, or Dallas, excuse me. He's played for now Dallas, Washington, and the Giants, excuse me. And he's on the Giants roster. I didn't even know he was on the Giants roster until I saw him on Monday night. And they pulled him up from the practice squad. And, because why is that? Because they've seen him over the years and they know what he's capable of. They trust him. When you look at a guy like Devontae Booker, for instance, Raiders get him on a veteran minimum salary on a 1-year deal. Devontae Booker is playing really good football, a perfect backup to Josh Jacobs in Vegas this year for the Raiders. Why is he playing well? Why did the Raiders even want him? Because they got to see him up close and personal in Denver, and they said, you know what? He's not half bad. Let's take a flyer on him. You see it all the time. Nobody knows your stuff more than family members. So when you look around at the division and you see a team interested in some of your stuff, you should be a little leery unless you know that there's a defect with that item. Now, I don't know if there's anything wrong with Isaiah Ford, wide receiver out of Virginia Tech, which was a 7th round pick for the Dolphins a few years ago. Don't know if there's anything wrong with him. I can tell you this. I've been impressed with Isaiah Ford. The last time the Dolphins came knocking on the Dolphins, the last time the Patriots came knocking on the Dolphins' door, they got Wes Welker at the receiver position. How'd that turn out for the New England Patriots? I hope this isn't another one of those situations. I know the Patriots are decimated. I've joked about their lack of talent and depth at wide receiver. It's a joke. It really is. Isaiah Ford immediately comes in and becomes probably the 2nd best receiver on their team behind Julian Edelman, which is a joke. It really is. I mean, and that's not to disrespect like the Demir Birds of the world and the Gunnar Olszewskis and all of those guys, but they don't have a lot of stuff out there, We'll see what he turns out to be for them. But that was really it. That was the extent of the trades, essentially. Not much happened. I thought more guys would move. I thought that we'd see maybe 1 or 2 more pass rushers change teams because so many teams need help getting after the quarterback. I was amazed that no one came calling for Olivier Vernon, but I told you a lot of this was going to come down to, and a lot of the good teams don't have tremendous cap space available right now. And I said, what it's all going to boil down to is how much is that guy being paid this season, and can we absorb the cap hit that it's going to take to bring this guy on board? And the answer is no for an Olivier Vernon. The answer is no for a Stephon Gilmore. The answer is no for a lot of these premium, high-priced veterans that are out there that were available. You know, that's why I thought, as I mentioned already, you would see a guy like a Randall Cobb that's not going to cost you a ton, that's still very active and still a good quality receiver in this league. I thought you'd see a guy like that potentially move. But I didn't think you were going to see any big names because of the fact that it's going to take a lot and you're going to have to probably give up more than you were willing to part ways with. And that ultimately proved to be true this trade deadline. It was a massive dud. Was expecting more. We got less. It is what it is. So from there, we go to social media maneuvers. And it's times like these where I want to talk to you guys and see what you guys have to say. So we'll run through any comments. If you're out there, you have a comment, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. We'll get through all of the comments. If there aren't any comments, we'll go right to garbage time and we'll get out of here. So we'll go through these comments quickly, see what you got to do, and move forward. All right. If we go, so this is from Kevin Dorofield, my man Kevin, appreciate you. Kevin writes, if we go vet quarterback in the offseason and some big names are available, who do you like? And who would you potentially go after? So I think there are going to be some big names available this offseason. Now, how does it shape up? Is it a Matt Ryan? Is it a Matthew Stafford that's available? I don't know everyone's contract situation, how many years they have left, this, that, and the third. If you're going to have to trade for them, what kind of compensation are you willing to give up? I do know that, there'll be some guys available via free agency that'll be intriguing, to say the least. However, I don't really know what Washington would be looking for. I just don't think the veteran, the old veteran, the Matt Ryans of the world, or are one of those types of guys are what they're looking for. I don't think that's the route that Washington's trying to go. It just doesn't kind of fit in where they are as a football team. I think they want a young quarterback to grow with what they're doing. And I think Kyle Allen could be the perfect bridge if they don't believe he is ultimately the guy. Now, I said, he's got 8 games, essentially, does Kyle Allen, or 9, I should say, the rest of this season to prove that maybe they don't have to go in a different direction. I don't think he's ultimately the guy. I don't. However, he's got 9 games to prove me and everybody else wrong. No one really thinks that this is his job to lose other than this season. I think after this season, the prevailing thought is, they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round of the 2021 draft. And more likely than not, that's what's going to take place. However, if he proves that he is more than just a backup quarterback, more than just a bridge, then you start to recalibrate what it is that you need to do. Maybe instead of having to spend a first round pick on a quarterback, you go after safety. You go after linebacker, which I think is a glaring need on this football team. Maybe you go after tight end, which is another glaring need, I believe, on this football team if you really want to upgrade the offense. So there are other directions that they can go in, but if you're going the free agency route, let's take a look real quick. Let's see if I can pull it up really quickly. Let's see what we have. 2021 NFL free agent QBs. Let's see what we have. And let's see who will be available. And I'm gonna hit up Sports Track, Spot Rack. That's usually a very reputable site. Let's see what they have to offer in terms of veterans next year. So let me see if I can get it down to the quarterback position alone. And let's see. All right, I'll just do it this way. So quarterbacks that will be available in the offseason of 2021 without having to trade any value are as follows. You're going to have Dak Prescott available, as we know. I don't think he gets out of Dallas. Phillip Rivers will be available. I don't think that's the direction they would want to go. Jacoby Brissett would be available. He's interesting, but I don't think that he's not the answer at the quarterback position. Mitchell Trubisky will be available. Again, he's on that Marcus Mariota track where he'll get a job somewhere, but it'll be in a backup capacity. Ryan Fitzpatrick is available. He's interesting because when you start talking bridge quarterbacks, he's been one of the most famous, one of the most infamous bridge quarterbacks in league history. So he's interesting. A lot of people seem to be smitten with him. Tyrod Taylor, not interested. AJ McCarron, not interested. Andy Dalton, not interested. Colt McCoy, not interested. Let's see. Nathan Peterman, Robert Griffin III, Matt Barkley, Nate Sudfeld, Matt Schaub. Obviously, Cam Newton is a guy that we've talked about. I haven't been blown away by Cam Newton, but he's definitely a name that you have to entertain because of his relationship with Ron Rivera and the familiarity there between the two. Joe Flacco, Ryan Griffin, Mike Glennon, Geno Smith, Blaine Gabbert. Jameis Winston is very interesting. However, I don't see him leaving New Orleans. And I don't really know if that's the guy you want to hitch your wagon to if you're looking to try to win football games because of his turnover history. But he's an interesting name nonetheless. Brian Hoyer, Brett Hundley, Sean Mannion, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, Garrett Gilbert, Joshua Dobbs. Kyle Allen is a restricted free agent, so Washington will have first dibs on him. They can put a tender on him if they like. So I don't think Kyle Allen's going anywhere. I think he's going to remain in Washington one way or another. And so David Blau and Tim Boyle are your last free agents. So not a lot to pick from there. Again, I don't really see them going the route of, free agent quarterback. I think they're going to, if anything, you draft a young guy, whether it's a first, second, third, or fourth round pick. And I think Kyle Allen is going to remain in Washington, whether he performs well this year or he doesn't. I think Kyle Allen is your starter week 1 next year for this team, whether there's a rookie on the roster or not. But we will see what happens. Got one here from Ali Side, who writes, I guess the Texans still want to win because they don't own a first or second round pick, but I would have traded at least one of those guys to give the young guys more opportunities. I don't think it's about still wanting to win this season. That ship has sailed. You're 1-6. At this point of the season, there's really not much to salvage in 2020. If you're the Texans, you're right. They don't have a lot of draft capital. I think they do have second round picks, if I'm not mistaken, because they traded Nuke Hopkins for a second rounder from Arizona. So I think they have a second. I think they have a bunch of seconds, if I'm not mistaken. I think they got like 3 seconds. They just don't have a first. And they don't have a first for like the next 2 or 3 years or something crazy like that. But at the end of the day, I think it was more about principle. Like, okay, this is what we value this player at. If you're not going to give us what we're asking for, then we're not going to just give him away just for the sake of saying, oh, we want more draft capital. I think they're looking at it from a standpoint of maybe we can re-sign Will Fuller. Maybe we want Will Fuller back. Maybe they don't. To me, I don't understand why you would let Will Fuller walk. If there were any guy that I would have said, of all the receivers that they have, Kenny Stills, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, and Randall Cobb, of all of those 4 receivers, the one guy that I would have said they must keep is Will Fuller. That's the one guy that I look at and say, he's the youngest, he's the most dynamic and explosive, he's the one that's the game changer. That's the one I want to keep the most. Again, I don't know what their cap situation looks like. I don't know what they're going to do in the offseason. That's just the move I would have made. They are right now in a position with Brandon Cooks. However, I think they're on the books for a lot of money for Cooks. So I don't know what they're exactly going to do there. And I guess we'll see. But I don't think this had anything to do with them still trying to win this year. I think it was all about, hey, are you going to give us what we're looking for? If not, we're just going to hold on to our stuff. And so that's the last comment for today. I appreciate you guys chiming in. Let's get to garbage time. So Thursday night football, Green Bay Packers at the San Francisco 49ers. Bottom line is, 49ers are super banged up. Packers can't afford to lose this football game after losing to the Minnesota Vikings in week number 8. That was a surprise. One of those losses that we just didn't expect. Packers took out the Vikings in week 1 in Minnesota. This game was in Green Bay at Lambeau. You just didn't expect them to allow Dalvin Cook to do what he did to them. But the Packers have an issue stopping the run, which is why the 49ers cannot be counted out of this football game on Sunday night. Because the one weakness the Packers have defensively is the strength of the 49ers despite all of the injuries. Now, if Green Bay's smart, they'll load the box. Whomever's at quarterback, whether it's Nick Mullins, more likely than not it will be Mullins, or it's CJ Beathard, aka CJ Beathard. Either way, you're not going to respect that guy under center and his ability to hurt you over the top and with his arm. You need to load up the box and say, San Francisco, you're not going to gash us for 200 plus yards rushing like the Vikings did. And we're going to stop the run tonight. And we're going to make you beat us with your quarterback. And if you're able to do so, 1, shame on us, and we're not as good as we thought. And 2, we tip our cap. You got us. But I just don't see that happening. No George Kittle. They're dealing with COVID cases, are the 49ers. You got no quarterback, no starting quarterback at least. This seems like a lopsided victory for the Packers, but in 2020 where things have been so unpredictable, you can't just assume. We know what assuming does. So I don't know what exactly is going to happen. I can tell you this. If the Packers are as good as we think they are, they'll win this game in a landslide. They'll romp the 49ers on Thursday night. This shouldn't even be close. And keep in mind, the last time these two teams met, twice last season, if you recall, the 49ers thoroughly dominated the Green Bay Packers. It wasn't even a contest in either game. The regular season matchup, which was the Sunday night game, and the playoff game later on in the year in Santa Clara as well. Both dominating performances. Much different team we're talking about. Okay, last year's team was healthy. They were dominant defensively. They had all of the momentum because they were winning a bunch of games. That's not what we're looking at this year with the 49ers. That being said, you still can't count out a Kyle Shanahan coached offense because of their ability to run the football and the Packers' inability this year to stop the run effectively, consistently, has to make you pause and say, this could be a lot closer than you think it should be. Packers are coming off of an ugly loss. The last time they came off of a loss, they exploded, scored 35 on the road versus Houston, got back in the win column. I surmise something along those lines is going to transpire in this game. But again, you can never be too sure when you're dealing with a team with a leaky run defense. Leaky run defense gets you got in this league. The Packers can't stop the run right now consistently enough for you to feel comfortable that the best run schemer in the business, Kyle Shanahan, won't be able to find his 9th back of the season to run for 135 yards and 2 scores and make this an interesting game. So despite the lack of health and the COVID situation and just the total chaos that is taking over this 49ers roster with all the injuries, they still got a shot in this game because Green Bay can't stop the run. If their defense can show up and slow down, and Aaron Jones playing, and we don't know if he's going to play or not right now. I didn't realize that he made such a difference to the point where this Packers offense wouldn't look as dominant. And I should have known better because he's such a good running back. I'm a huge advocate for Aaron Jones. Talk about his standing in this league. When we talk about best backs in the league, you know, you're going to run the gamut and you're going to get 4 or 5 guys in. But, you know, after that, Aaron Jones needs to be in that discussion. We're seeing his impact now. He hasn't played the last 2 weeks, you know, and they were able to get by against Houston. Houston's not a good team in week 8, or week 7, but in week 8 versus the Vikings, they really sorely missed Aaron Jones. And it's not like Jamal Williams isn't a capable fill-in. but he doesn't offer the same versatility as an Aaron Jones in the pass game. And I think that's where the biggest difference is. And I'll take it a step further. Aaron Jones offers a level of explosion and dynamic ability where if he hits a hole, he can go much faster than slow. Whereas Jamal Williams, he has a little burst too, but it's not Aaron Jones-like. So they're really missing Aaron Jones. If he plays, it changes this offense drastically. Big picture. Packers are the better team. They need to play like it. They can't afford to lose. You lost to a one-win team last week. Although, family business changes everything. Family business, I don't care what the records are. It's family business. This is not family business, however. You cannot lose to another team under 500. If you're Green Bay, got to find a way to win this football game. I think they will, but I don't know if it's going to be the ass thrashing that a lot of you think it's going to be. That's essentially what I'm trying to get through to a lot of you guys. So, with that being said, it's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thank you for tuning in to the Louie T Network podcast. I didn't want to interrupt you from your midday moves. A lot of you are still tuned in and dialed into this presidential election. Go right back to whatever it was you were doing in your regularly scheduled programming. I apologize for even imparting in that, even taking you away from that. So I'm going to glide to the side, let you guys do what it is that you need to do. And I'm going to go ahead and do what I need to do. So we'll reconvene again on Friday. I'll have my picks. I have to have a bounce back week in week number 9. Week 8 was not kind to the good guy. It's a lot of struggles last week. I need to bounce back, and I need to bounce back in a major way. And I'll have my picks for you. It starts on Thursday night. Green Bay needs to get me off. It's not hard. This shouldn't be hard. Green Bay needs to get me off to a good start. This is not a hard game. Green Bay needs to take care of business on the road, but I can tell you this much. After seeing what I saw from Green Bay last week, nothing's out of bounds. So we'll see what happens, but in any event, I'm your man Louie T, signing off. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care.